Bitcoin has spent the last month trading above $100,000 per coin. But I think between now and the end of 2025, it could go much higher, as high as $150,000. In this video, I'm going to look at 5 charts to show why I'm bullish on Bitcoin and why you should be too. Let's get into it. First is the long-term holder supply. Economics 101 says price is a function of supply and demand. When supply decreases and demand stays constant, price must go up. Inversely, if supply stays constant and demand increases, price also must go up. And as we can see in this chart, in the green line, we have the long-term holder supply. So this is Bitcoin on chain that has not moved in at least 155 days or approximately 6 months. And what we can see is that this metric is at an all-time high. Over 14.5 million Bitcoin have not moved in the last 6 months. And previous instances where this metric hit an all-time high, as you can see here towards the end of 2020, that preceded a massive Bitcoin bull market. And again, towards the end of 2023, long-term holder supply made a new high. And then shortly thereafter, Bitcoin moved up as well. In Q4 of 2024, a long-term holder supply made a local top, and the Bitcoin price increased. And in December, January, when the Bitcoin price first went over 100,000, we saw some of these long-term holders sell their coins. That makes sense. They'd been holding Bitcoin for a while. Bitcoin hit a nice round number, a huge milestone, and long-term holders started to sell some coins and take some fiat profits. But over the past few months, we have seen them begin to accumulate again. Some of this is long-term holders accumulating Bitcoin, and some of it is short-term holders aging into the long-term holder category. But at the end of the day, this is hyper bullish because the Bitcoin supply is constraining, and there's only one way to get supply for new demand to find supply, and that is to bid the price higher. Because unlike other commodities such as gold, if demand for gold increases, you can dig more gold. If demand for corn increases, farmers can plant more corn crops. But when demand for Bitcoin increases, you cannot increase the supply. You must bid the price higher to incentivize holders to sell those coins. So long-term holder supply going up, extremely bullish for Bitcoin. Next is the average miner break-even cost. Now, the cost to mine a Bitcoin depends on primarily your electricity rate and the type of Bitcoin mining hardware you are using. So there's not necessarily one distinct answer for every miner, but this is kind of the industry average. So when we look at the average efficiency of different mining hardware and average electricity rates, this is the number that we have calculated here at Blockware. And we actually created this metric in 2022. And since then, this has accurately timed 2 Bitcoin bottoms. So here in Q4 of 2022, the Bitcoin price collided with the average miner cost of production, and that happened to be the bottom of that bear market. And then again, this happened after the halving. So in Q3 of 2024, the miner cost of production was around 60K. The Bitcoin price bottomed around 60K before moving up to 100K. And then here, very recently, the miner cost of production hit around 80 to 85,000, and Bitcoin bottomed right in that range. And so, if we think logically, an asset like Bitcoin, which requires a lot of energy and work to be produced, it's not going to necessarily trade below the cost of production for miners, right? If it costs them $80,000 in electricity to mine 1 Bitcoin, you're not really going to see Bitcoin trade below that price. And historically, this metric has proved to be very accurate. And so we're seeing what would appear to be another bottom indicator here. So that is extremely bullish. Next is realized price and the MVRV ratio, which just means market value to realized value ratio. So I'm going to move my face here so you can get a better look of this metric. And here in the orange line, again, we have the Bitcoin price. And in the green line, we have the realized price. So what this measures is the sort of average cost basis of all Bitcoin that have moved on chain. So it takes the market cap of Bitcoin and the realized cap and it converts it into a realized price metric. And so based on chain data, the average cost basis for the entire Bitcoin network as a whole, kind of like the AVWAP in stocks, if you're familiar with traditional finance, which is the average cost basis for a certain equity, the average cost basis for Bitcoin is about 50K. So we're looking anywhere between 45 to 50K. It's around $47,000 to be exact. That's this green line. And as you can see, historically, when the orange line, the Bitcoin price, falls below the average cost basis for the network, extreme value. This happened at the bottom of the 2015 bear market, the bottom of the 2018 bear market, briefly during the COVID crash of March 2020, and then in 2022 during the FTX collapse. Now, Bitcoin's price is not below the MVRV or the realized price at this moment, but we can look at the ratio between these two metrics, which is this black line here, and see when is a point of extreme value and when is a time where the Bitcoin price may be getting overheated. And right now, the MVRV ratio is around 2.3. Now, for reference, during the peak in Q1 of 2024, as well as the peak during Q4 of 2024, so when Bitcoin made its return to all-time highs last year, and then when it cracked $100,000, the MVRV ratio reached around 2.7. So based on the current realized price of $47,000, we're looking at an effective Bitcoin price of $125,000. That would get realized price, the ratio here, to be equivalent to what it was earlier last year. So we're looking at $125,000 on kind of a near-term time horizon. If Bitcoin price goes over that, then we could be seeing some froth in the market. The next chart, the fourth chart, is Bitcoin and global M2 with kind of a 6-month lag here. So I've dragged the global M2 chart here in the green ahead by 6 months because it takes some time before new fiat liquidity finds its way into assets, specifically Bitcoin in this instance. Now, historically, Bitcoin has been the primary absorbent of new liquidity into the fiat system. So when the supply of dollars, euros, yen, yuan, pesos, Canadian dollars, Turkish liras, etc., when their aggregate supply increases, Bitcoin absorbs that. Now, on the inverse, when it contracts, when global M2 decreases, Bitcoin is on the short end of that stick. Now, it makes sense that Bitcoin's very reflexive to liquidity because it is the only major asset class that is traded 24/7, 365 across the entire world. It is going to be the most responsive. It's got a finite supply. It's a neutral bearer asset. And we're seeing global M2 make record highs. And this is incredibly bullish for Bitcoin, similar to this is kind of the other side of the long-term holder supply, right? If this is the supply chart, then global M2 here is the demand side of things. How many dollars are there in the world to bid the Bitcoin price? Demand, the theoretical nominal potential demand for Bitcoin is going up. And we saw a brief drop in global M2 earlier this year, and the Bitcoin price dipped. It went from about 100K to down to 80K, but now we're seeing global M2 continue its forever trend up and to the right, and Bitcoin is due to follow here very shortly. Now, the last chart, this one I'm hyper bullish on, is the number of public companies, publicly traded companies with Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And at the start of this year, at the end of 2024, this number was only 64, which was a nice jump from 43 the year prior. But we have seen the public Bitcoin scene just absolutely take off. So now there's roughly 151 publicly traded companies that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. This is over a 100% increase from the start of the year. And it's no surprise why. Fiat dollars, they continue to lose value forever. If you're a business, how can you invest in an arm of your business and outperform Bitcoin's compound annual growth rate, right? Bitcoin has grown 40 to 60% per year on average over the last 10 years. Can you spin up a new arm of your business that can grow at that rate or faster? And what we're seeing is a lot of so-called zombie companies or dead companies that are really struggling. They're saying, hey, rather than trying to compete with Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, let's just buy Bitcoin. Let's deploy our excess cash and let's raise new capital. Let's leverage our advantages as a public company. We can raise capital very quickly via debt or equity issuance, and let's just buy Bitcoin and let's ride this wave. And they have been very, very successful. Obviously, Metaplanet, MicroStrategy, Semler Scientific, the list goes on and on. But this number is going to continue to skyrocket, and that is underlying demand for Bitcoin, incredibly bullish. And this isn't just your retail demand, right? Bitcoin had a surge of adoption in 2017 and 2021, but these were retail participants that are very emotional And so when the Bitcoin price started to drop, they sold into that, making the drop even more aggressive, right? But these publicly traded companies, what we've seen so far is that they're consistently buying. They're not, FOMOing in. This isn't some kind of speculative play. This is a fundamental transformation of their business and their balance sheet. And they view Bitcoin as pristine collateral, as the bedrock of their balance sheet. We're seeing Bitcoin denominated KPIs and return measurements. And so this number is going to continue to go up, and these entities are going to continue to bid the Bitcoin price higher. So to recap, long-term holder supply, all-time highs. Supply decreases and demand stays constant. The Bitcoin price is going up. The break-even cost for miners. Bitcoin doesn't really trade below the cost of production. Recently, these two metrics collided. The Bitcoin price is going to go up. The MVRV ratio, there's still a lot of room for Bitcoin to increase from here before we would say that on-chain data is looking frothy and overheated. Global M2, money printer go burr. The amount of dollars, yen, yuan, pesos, etc., euros in the system is going up. More dollars, but only 21 million Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price is going to go higher. And lastly, the number of publicly traded companies entering the Bitcoin space, buying Bitcoin hyper aggressively, has increased to 151 publicly traded companies from 64 at the start of the year. Incredibly bullish trend. And how can you benefit from all of this? How can you capitalize? Well, the number one thing you can do is you can purchase Bitcoin miners on the Blockware marketplace. So with mining, you are producing Bitcoin at a discount. Just look at this chart here. Blockware clients are actually producing Bitcoin at a lower price, somewhere around 50 to 75K, depending on your machine. But with the Bitcoin price at 100K, you can buy it for 100K. You can buy it for 125 a few months from now, 150 a year from now, or you can mine it at an extreme discount. And what makes the Blockware marketplace fascinating is you have a transparent look into the miners before you make a purchase. This is a platform built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. So let's look at this machine here. This is an S21 Hydro hosted at one of our sites in North Dakota. It has an electricity rate of 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour, which, for reference, the average electricity rate for residential United States citizens is around 16 cents per kilowatt hour. So more than 50% off on your electricity compared to what you can likely get trying to mine at home. And here you can see the historical hash rate of this machine. So over the past 30 days, this machine had 3 brief outages, but other than that, it has been operating well. If we zoom in here, you can even see the serial number of a miner. So before you make a purchase, take the serial number, go on the manufacturer's website, and you can see how much longer this machine has under warranty. You can see how much Bitcoin this machine has mined over the last month. So it's mined 0.005 BTC for, and it paid $287 in electricity that month for a net profit of 255 USD. So transparent look into the miners before you even make a purchase. Don't trust, verify. Start accumulating Bitcoin at a discount. For more information, you can schedule a free consultation with one of Blockware's Bitcoin mining professionals. Go to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/consult. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/consult.